Hi guys. So I wanted to bring up a story today that comes from Katy Bowman's book, Move Your DNA. And this is really talking about this is an answer to some movement awareness modalities and exercise modalities that seem to be teaching full body motion all of the time, or they train people to be aware of and teach what should be maybe proper in everyday motions. And what I tend to see is, or what I tend to hear from people is that they're kind of trained to get, hip rotation and shoulder rotation and a little spinal rotation and maybe a little side to side hip sway. And so there's a ton of joint ranges of mobility and motion that are possible. And yes, we should have all of those available to us in order to have the most dynamic and mobile body. However, here's the story. In Katy Bowman's book, Move Your DNA, she uses this example of a cheetah that, and you can watch videos of a cheetah running after its prey. And it starts to sprint, and you can see this entire full body motion. The arms expand, the spine expands, and then it flexes and it curls in. And with every step, it expands its whole body and it pulls in. And that sort of full spinal motion gives it the power, or the entire body motion, gives it the power to sprint as fast as it can to catch its prey. And it's a beautiful thing to see. However, then if you look at the other times when the cheetah is walking around and not chasing its prey, what does it do? And you'll see that it actually does not do this full spinal hip and shoulder flexion, but maybe it's just hinging at its joints of its hips and shoulders, elbows and knees, the equivalent of a cat's elbows and knees, I guess, and walking, and it's just padding around. Now, why is that important? Because you can see this also in its structure of its skeleton, the way it's developed, that if the cheetah was intended to, or if it spent the duration of evolution always sprinting or always using its entire body to move around in every way, in every circumstance, then you would suspect to see that the joints in the spine were really robust with a lot of musculature to support that type of motion. But however, you don't see that. Instead, you see that the most robusticity, the most robusticity and the most mobility is through their hip and shoulder joints. So that implies that the majority of time, they're maybe stabilizing through the spine and core and their whole trunk, but using mostly just shoulders and hips when they're walking around. And why is that? Is because it takes an exorbitant amount of energy to always be flexing and extending, to using the entire body for motions in which it isn't really needed. Okay, so that was a big explanation in a cheetah sense, but the same applies to human beings. So if you were to think of me sprinting, you could see me really try to push off with one leg. I'd reach way forward with the other leg and I'd counterbalance with the arms. And as I push off with the leg, I try to get even more extension by finding this extension of my spine too. And I'd be doing this big sprinting motion, maybe while I'm trying to run away from that cheetah. However, same as in the cheetah, what we find is we don't have an intense amount of robusticity in the muscles of the lower spine. And yet we do have a large amount of muscle mass and mobility and robusticity in all the muscles of the hips around the pelvis, which implies that evolutionarily, we didn't spend the majority of our time using our spines to move around like that, when just simply padding around and walking in daily normal motions, this area here stays very stable, whereas the motions of the hips do the majority of the work, because that's what they're designed for. So this is just a little bit of food for thought as you start to explore around with this idea of what is moving when I move. And we'll explore a few more motions of this, or a few more exercises to illuminate this in some other videos coming up. All right, have a great week. I'll see you soon.